The cabin stood as a defiant reminder of simpler times, its weathered walls holding firm against the encroaching forest that surrounded it. Liam Porter traced his fingers along the rough-hewn timber as he approached the front door, feeling every groove and imperfection like Braille telling the story of his family's history. The key turned with a reluctant groan, and the door swung inward with a whisper of protest. 20 years of studying the stars hadn't prepared him for the humbling silence of defeat. The rejection letter from the International Astronomical Union still burned in his pocket. While your theory about potential quantum signatures in stellar radiation patterns is intriguing, we find insufficient evidence to support further funding. 3 decades of work, reduced to a polite dismissal. The cabin's interior remained frozen in time, exactly as he remembered it from childhood summers spent with his grandmother. Ancient astronomical charts still decorated the walls, yellowed and curling at the edges, marking the passion that had shaped 3 generations of Porters. His grandmother had been the first, mapping the stars from this very mountaintop with equipment that would be considered primitive by today's standards. Liam set down his bags and began the ritual of awakening the sleeping cabin. The generator hummed to life with surprising eagerness, and the water pump cleared its throat with a series of coughs before settling into a steady rhythm. As darkness fell, he sat on the worn leather chair by the window, telescope beside him, more out of habit than intention. The first anomaly appeared 3 days into his self-imposed exile. It started with the telescope, his grandmother's pride and joy, restored and modified over years of use. The lens had acquired a peculiar iridescence, like oil on water, that hadn't been there before. When he looked through it at the night sky, the stars seemed to pulse with an unfamiliar rhythm, as if trying to communicate in some cosmic Morse code. Then came the lights in the forest. At first, Liam dismissed them as bioluminescent fungi or perhaps the reflection of starlight off dew-covered leaves. But they moved with purpose, weaving between trees in patterns too deliberate to be natural. They reminded him of the quantum signatures he'd spent his career chasing, precise, mathematical, yet somehow alive. 1 week into his stay, he saw her for the first time. The moon hung full and heavy in the sky, casting long shadows through the trees. Liam sat at his grandmother's desk, reviewing old research notes, when movement caught his eye. There, at the edge of the clearing, stood a figure that defied everything he knew about human physiology. She was tall, her form seeming to shift between solid and translucent like starlight through a prism. Her skin held a subtle luminescence that made her appear to glow from within, and her movements possessed a fluid grace that spoke of a world with different laws of physics. But it was her eyes that captured him completely. They contained what looked like actual stars, shifting and swirling in impossible depths. Their first proper encounter happened during a thunderstorm. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the clearing in stark bursts of white light. She stood closer this time, near enough for Liam to see the intricate patterns that seemed to flow across her skin like constellations mapping themselves in real time. Rain passed through her form in some places while beating off others, as if she existed partially in multiple phases of matter. "Hello," Liam called out, his scientific mind warring with the impossibility before him. "I'm Liam Porter. This is my family's cabin." She tilted her head in a gesture that somehow managed to convey both curiosity and amusement. When she moved, her form left trailing echoes of light, like long-exposure photographs of the stars. Her response came not in words but in a series of harmonic tones that resonated in Liam's chest, reminding him of the pulsing patterns he'd observed through the telescope. That night marked the beginning of something extraordinary. Liam found himself installing his research equipment in the cabin, not to prove his theories to the academic world, but to understand the living embodiment of everything he'd hypothesized about quantum stellar phenomena. The visitor, who he would later learn to call by a name that sounded like starlight breaking through clouds, seemed equally fascinated by his primitive instruments and methods of study. She began leaving things for him to find, crystalline structures that hummed with impossible frequencies, symbols traced in morning frost that matched no known mathematical language, and once, a small device that projected what appeared to be a three-dimensional star map of a system he'd never seen. Each night, she drew closer to the cabin, and Liam found himself staying awake longer, driven by an insatiable curiosity that went beyond scientific inquiry. He started leaving his own offerings, complex mathematical equations, star charts, and simple sketches trying to explain human concepts of astronomy and physics. As the first month drew to a close, Liam realized that his exile had become something else entirely. The rejection letter lay forgotten in a drawer, its importance fading like old starlight against the discovery of something far more profound. In the presence of this otherworldly visitor, all his theories about quantum stellar signatures didn't seem so impossible anymore. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to appear, she approached the cabin's porch for the first time. Liam's heart thundered in his chest as she raised a luminescent hand toward him, her star-filled eyes meeting his with an intensity that spoke of questions as deep as his own. In that moment, he understood that sometimes the most remarkable discoveries aren't found in the stars above, but in the courage to reach out towards something unknown and wonderful. The porch creaked beneath his feet as he stepped forward to meet her, and somewhere in the distance, a shooting star traced its path across the sky, marking the beginning of a story that would change both their worlds forever. The moment their hands touched, Liam's world exploded into light. It wasn't painful, rather, it felt like diving into a pool of liquid starlight. Images flooded his mind, vast celestial gardens where stars bloomed like flowers, ships that sailed on solar winds, and cities built in the hearts of dying stars. Through it all, he heard her voice, not in words but in pure concepts and emotions. Nebula, she projected into his mind, along with the sensation of cosmic dust clouds birthing new stars. It took him a moment to realize she was telling him her name, or at least, the closest approximation his human mind could comprehend. Nebula, Liam repeated aloud, tasting the way the word danced on his tongue. She smiled, and the air around them shimmered with aurora-like lights. The name suited her, she was just as vast and beautiful as the stellar nurseries she'd shown him. Their communication began awkwardly at first, like a dance where neither partner knew the steps. Nebula's natural form of expression involved complex mathematical concepts interwoven with emotional resonances, while Liam struggled to translate human ideas into something she could understand. Yet somehow, they found common ground in their shared fascination with the cosmos. Over the next few weeks, their evening meetings became longer and more intricate. Nebula brought what appeared to be technological artifacts from her ship, though ship was perhaps too simple a word for what she described as a semi-organic quantum vessel capable of riding the threads of spacetime like a spider on its web. The ship had been damaged during an unexpected solar flare, forcing her to seek refuge on Earth while it regenerated. Liam found himself sharing his own research with her, explaining his theories about quantum signatures in stellar radiation. Nebula's eyes sparkled with particular interest at this, and through their mental connection, she conveyed that his theories weren't just correct, they were the beginning of understanding how her people navigated the cosmos. One evening, as they sat on the cabin's porch watching a meteor shower, Nebula shared something that shook Liam to his core. Through their mental link, she showed him that Earth wasn't randomly chosen as her emergency landing site. Her people had been watching humanity for centuries, particularly those humans who seemed to grasp at deeper truths about the universe. The Porter family, with their 3 generations of astronomers, had caught their attention. Your grandmother, Nebula projected, along with images of nights long past. Liam saw his grandmother at her telescope, unaware that she was being observed by beings who danced among the stars she studied. He saw himself as a child, pointing excitedly at constellations while something luminous watched from the forest's edge. The revelation should have been unsettling, but instead, Liam felt a deep sense of connection to his family's legacy. All those years of stargazing hadn't just been scientific pursuit, they had been building a bridge across the cosmic void, one observation at a time. As their understanding of each other grew, so did their comfort in each other's presence. Nebula began spending more time in the cabin, fascinated by human artifacts and customs. She particularly loved the old astronomical charts, running her luminescent fingers over the paper and absorbing the history of human astronomical discovery through touch. Liam found himself explaining the most basic human concepts, from the simple pleasure of a cup of hot coffee to the complex emotions behind music. Nebula, in turn, shared glimpses of her world, a civilization so advanced that the line between technology and nature had long since blurred into irrelevance. But it wasn't all peaceful discovery. Sometimes, late at night, Nebula would grow still and distant, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. Through their connection, Liam sensed her internal conflict. Her people had strict protocols about interaction with developing civilizations, and every moment she spent with him pushed the boundaries of what was permitted. One night, as they watched the stars wheel overhead, Nebula shared a troubling truth. Others of her kind were aware of her extended stay on Earth, and not all of them approved. Some believed that humanity wasn't ready for contact, that knowledge of advanced civilizations would disrupt Earth's natural development. They watch, she projected, along with a sensation of distant disapproval. Time grows short. Liam felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He had known, somewhere in the back of his mind, that this couldn't last forever. Nebula was a being who sailed the solar winds. Sooner or later, she would need to return to her own kind. Yet the thought of losing her, of returning to a life where the stars were just distant points of light rather than paths to other worlds, filled him with a profound sense of loss. As if sensing his distress, Nebula's form brightened, and through their connection flowed a warmth that felt like sunrise after a long night. She shared images of possibility, human ships sailing alongside her people's vessels, Earth joining a greater community of stellar civilizations, and through it all, a sense of hope that transcended the vast distances between their worlds. The night deepened around them, and fireflies emerged to dance in the clearing, their lights mimicking the stars above. Nebula watched them with delight, her own luminescence adjusting to match their gentle pulsing. In that moment, despite the challenges ahead, Liam felt a certainty that went beyond rational thought. Whatever came next, the universe had brought them together for a reason, and he was determined to prove that humanity, or at least one human, was ready for the truth she represented. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of lavender and gold. Liam stood at the edge of a hidden clearing deep in the forest, watching as Nebula interfaced with her ship. The vessel, if one could call it that, resembled a living crystal formation that seemed to phase between visibility and transparency. Its surface rippled like liquid mercury whenever Nebula touched it, responding to her presence with pulses of ethereal light. Through their mental connection, Liam felt her concentration as she worked to repair the damaged systems. The solar flare had done more than just strand her on Earth, it had wounded the ship's semi-organic components in ways that required careful healing. Nebula's people didn't simply build their technology, they grew it, nurturing it like gardeners tending to exotic plants. Understanding grows, Nebula projected, sharing images of the ship's neural pathways slowly regenerating. But beneath her optimism, Liam sensed a deeper concern. The repairs were taking longer than expected, and each passing day increased the risk of discovery. Their fears materialized one crisp morning when the distant sound of helicopter rotors shattered the mountain's tranquility. Liam's heart raced as he helped Nebula activate the ship's camouflage systems, rendering it completely invisible just as the aircraft passed overhead. Through their connection, he felt her anxiety spike. The helicopter's sensing equipment had come dangerously close to detecting her vessel's energy signature. That evening, as they sat in the cabin reviewing satellite data Liam had acquired through his old university contacts, Nebula shared more about her mission. She wasn't just an explorer, she was part of a scientific initiative studying emerging civilizations. Earth had reached a crucial juncture in its development. Humanity stood on the brink of either transcending their planetary boundaries or destroying themselves in the attempt. "Show me," Liam requested, opening his mind to their connection. The images that flooded in took his breath away, countless civilizations across the galaxy, each following their own path to the stars. Some succeeded, joining the grand dance of interstellar society. Others faltered, their light snuffed out by war, environmental collapse, or simple fear of the unknown. But it was the successes that captivated him, worlds where technology and nature existed in harmony, societies that had overcome their divisions to reach for something greater. Through Nebula's memories, he experienced the joy of first contact with civilizations ready to join the galactic community, felt the wonder of watching a species take their first steps among the stars. Their work together took on new urgency. While Nebula repaired her ship, Liam began compiling evidence of humanity's potential. He showed her Earth's art, music, and literature, the dreams of countless humans who had looked to the stars and imagined something more. Through their mental link, he shared the pure exhilaration of scientific discovery, the moment when a new truth about the universe revealed itself. Nebula absorbed it all with growing fascination. She began to understand human emotions in deeper ways, experiencing them not just as abstract concepts but as powerful forces that shaped human perception and action. In turn, she taught Liam to see the universe through her people's eyes, as a living tapestry of interconnected consciousness, where the line between organic and artificial, physical and spiritual, had long since dissolved. Their evenings took on a routine that felt both domestic and extraordinary. They would sit on the cabin's porch, sharing their respective worlds through their mental connection while the stars wheeled overhead. Liam learned to process complex mathematical concepts that existed beyond human language, while Nebula developed a particular fondness for human poetry, fascinated by how simple words could capture such complex emotions. But their idyllic existence couldn't last. One night, as they worked late in the ship's control chamber, Nebula received a message from her superiors. The transmission came as pure thought, but through their connection, Liam understood its gravity. Her presence on Earth had been detected by more than just her own people, other, less benevolent civilizations had taken notice. Danger approaches, she projected, sharing glimpses of vast ships moving through the darkness between stars. These weren't the organic vessels of her people, but something colder, more mechanical. They belonged to a faction that believed developing civilizations should be harvested for resources rather than nurtured toward enlightenment. The revelation struck Liam like a physical blow. Their private world of shared discovery had suddenly become part of something much larger and more dangerous. Earth's future might depend on what happened in these mountains, and neither of them had much time to prepare. That night, as they walked back to the cabin under a sky that now seemed filled with both wonder and threat, Liam felt Nebula's hand slip into his. Her touch sent familiar cascades of starlight through his mind, but this time they carried an unmistakable emotion, one that transcended species and space itself. In that moment, he understood that what had begun as an extraordinary encounter had evolved into something far more profound. They stood together at the cabin's threshold, their linked minds filling with possible futures, some beautiful, some terrifying, all uncertain. The only certainty was that everything would soon change. The question was no longer whether humanity was ready for the truth of their cosmic neighbors, but whether they would have any choice in the matter.
The government vehicles arrived at dawn, their black surfaces reflecting the rising sun like polished obsidian. Liam counted 4 SUVs and 2 unmarked ones, all moving with purposeful precision up the mountain road. Through his connection with Nebula, he felt her consciousness snap to alert awareness, her form flickering with tension in the early morning light. "They've detected something," he whispered, though speaking aloud wasn't necessary between them anymore. The mental image she shared confirmed his fears. Their instruments had picked up trace elements of her ship's quantum signature, despite their best efforts at concealment. The next few hours became a careful dance of misdirection. Liam met the agents at his door, playing the role of the eccentric astronomer perfectly. He showed them his grandmother's telescope, his research papers, carefully steering them away from anything that might hint at Nebula's presence. All the while, he felt her consciousness brushing against his, coordinating their movements like partners in an intricate ballet. Special Agent Marcus Ward led the investigation, his sharp eyes missing nothing as he toured the cabin. "We've detected some unusual energy signatures in this area, Dr. Porter," he said, studying Liam's face. "Our satellites picked up radiation patterns that don't match any known terrestrial source." Liam felt a flutter of panic, quickly suppressed. "Well, this region has always had interesting geological features," he offered, launching into a detailed explanation of mineral deposits and atmospheric phenomena. He could feel Nebula's approval through their link. The best deceptions were built on foundations of truth. But Ward wasn't easily deterred. His team set up monitoring equipment around the property, their presence a constant reminder that time was running out. Through their connection, Nebula shared increasingly troubled visions. The hostile ships were drawing closer, their intentions crystal clear in the cold geometry of their approach. Late that night, while the agents maintained their vigil from their vehicles, Liam and Nebula met in the ship's chamber. Her vessel had nearly finished its regeneration, its crystalline surfaces now humming with restored power. But what should have been a moment of triumph felt bittersweet. "They come," Nebula projected, sharing images of the approaching threat. The hostile ships would arrive within days, their technology capable of detecting her presence despite any attempts at concealment. More troubling were their intentions. They viewed Earth as a resource to be exploited, its population as test subjects for their cruel experiments. Through their mental link, Liam felt the weight of the choice before them. Nebula's people could intervene, but doing so would irrevocably alter humanity's development. The alternative was to leave Earth to face this threat alone, unprepared and unwarned. "There has to be another way," Liam insisted, his mind racing through possibilities. Through their connection, he felt Nebula's consciousness intertwined with his, their shared thoughts spawning new ideas that neither would have conceived alone. The solution, when it came, was both brilliant and terrible in its simplicity. Nebula's ship, fully restored, could generate a quantum field that would make Earth appear temporarily unstable to outside observers. The hostile ships would be forced to avoid the planet or risk being trapped in a temporal distortion. But maintaining such a field would require an anchor point on Earth, a consciousness capable of sustaining the quantum harmonics necessary for the deception. "You want to leave part of yourself here," Liam realized, understanding flowing through their connection. The process would essentially split Nebula's consciousness. Part would return to her people, while part would remain bound to Earth, maintaining the protective field. The next day passed in a blur of preparation and careful avoidance of the government agents. Liam provided cover stories for his increased activity in the forest, claiming to be gathering data for a new research paper. All the while, he and Nebula worked to modify her ship's systems for the unprecedented procedure they planned. As sunset approached, Agent Ward made one final visit to the cabin. This time, his questions were more direct, more pointed. "Dr. Porter, we've analyzed the energy signatures," he said, laying photographs on the table. "They match theoretical patterns for quantum entanglement on a massive scale." "Want to explain that?" Liam looked at the photos. They showed ghostly images of light patterns in the forest, Nebula's ship barely visible as a crystalline outline. Through their connection, he felt her tension, but also her trust in him. The moment had come to decide how much of the truth to reveal. "Agent Ward," Liam began carefully, What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I need you to listen. Humanity isn't alone in the universe, and right now, we are facing a choice that will determine our species' future. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the cabin floor, Liam began to explain. Not everything there were truths that humanity wasn't ready for, but enough to make Ward understand the gravity of their situation. Through it all, he felt Nebula's presence in his mind, guiding his words, helping him bridge the gap between human understanding and cosmic reality. The night deepened around them, and somewhere in the darkness, a choice awaited that would change not just two lives, but the course of human history itself. The mountain air crackled with tension as midnight approached. Agent Ward sat at the cabin's old wooden table, his face illuminated by the soft glow of Nebula's presence. She had chosen to reveal herself after Liam's explanation, understanding that some truths needed to be seen to be believed. So you are telling me, Ward said slowly, that hostile aliens are approaching Earth, and our only defense is to essentially create a cosmic invisibility shield? His trained skepticism warred with the evidence of his own eyes as Nebula's form shifted in response to his words, her starlit eyes conveying both wisdom and urgency. Through their mental connection, Liam felt Nebula's approval as he answered, not just a shield. Think of it more as a quantum smokescreen. Earth will appear to exist in multiple temporal states simultaneously. Any attempt to interact with the planet would risk temporal entanglement. The government vehicles outside had gone quiet, their occupants awaiting Ward's orders. The agent studied the astronomical charts on the walls, his gaze lingering on the hand-drawn maps created by Liam's grandmother. And maintaining this defense requires you to. He trailed off, gesturing at Nebula. To divide my consciousness, Nebula projected, her thoughts translated through her connection with Liam. Part of me must return to warn my people, to ensure Earth receives protection. But another part must remain here, anchored to this place, to maintain the quantum field. Dawn was approaching when Ward finally made his decision. He would help them not just by keeping their secret, but by providing cover for what needed to be done. His team would maintain a perimeter, ensuring they weren't disturbed during the crucial moments ahead. As the first hints of sunrise touched the eastern sky, Liam and Nebula made their way to her ship. The crystal vessel pulsed with renewed energy, its surfaces reflecting the growing light in impossible colors. Ward and his agents maintained their distance, watching in awe as Nebula began the complex process of preparing both ship and self for what was to come. Through their mental link, Liam felt everything. The intricate quantum calculations required to split a consciousness across spacetime. The delicate adjustments to the ship's living crystal matrix. The deep well of emotion that flowed beneath Nebula's technical precision, love for her people, for Earth, for him. It will not be goodbye, she projected, her form shimmering with increased brilliance as the procedure began. Part of me will always be here, as much myself as what returns to the stars. The ship's crystal chamber hummed with growing power as Nebula initiated the quantum division. Liam stood within the circle of energy, his mind joined with hers as her consciousness began to separate like light through a prism. Through their connection, he felt her memories sorting themselves, some staying, some going, all remaining somehow whole despite the division. The process reached its peak as the sun crested the mountain ridge. Light exploded from the ship in all directions, temporarily blinding everyone present. When Liam's vision cleared, he found himself facing to Nebula's, one solid and preparing to board her ship, the other more ethereal, her form already beginning to merge with the quantum field that would protect Earth. Words weren't necessary in that moment. Through their three-way connection, emotions and thoughts flowed freely. The part of Nebula returning to the stars shared visions of the battles ahead, of convincing her people to openly protect Earth. The part remaining showed images of years to come, of subtle guidance and protection as humanity took its first steps toward the stars. The ship's crystal surface rippled as the departing nebula merged with it. Around them, the air began to shimmer as her earthbound counterpart expanded her consciousness, beginning to weave the quantum field that would shield the planet. Liam felt both connections in his mind, distinct yet harmonious, like different instruments playing the same song. The field will change you too, the remaining nebula projected as her sister's ship began to rise. Our connection, maintained over years, will slowly awaken abilities in you that humanity has yet to develop naturally. You will be a bridge, helping prepare Earth for what lies ahead. The ship ascended silently, its crystalline form catching the morning light like a new star being born. On the ground, Ward and his agents watched in wonder as the air around them began to take on an opalescent quality, the first visible sign of the quantum field that would soon envelop the planet. Liam stood in the clearing long after the ship had vanished from view, his mind filled with the dual presence of nebula, one reaching across the stars, the other surrounding him like a cosmic embrace. Through their shared consciousness, he felt the hostile ships encountering the quantum field, their confusion as Earth seemed to slip between moments of time, becoming impossible to target or approach. Years would pass, and humanity would continue to evolve, unaware of how close they had come to disaster. Liam's research would eventually help humanity understand the quantum nature of consciousness, preparing them for the day when they would be ready to join the galactic community. And through it all, in a cabin perched between Earth and stars, two beings from different worlds would continue their dance of discovery, their consciousness bridging the vast distance between what humanity was and what it could become. For in the end, love hadn't just transcended space, it had transcended the very nature of existence itself, becoming something as infinite and eternal as the cosmos they both cherished.